Hello everyone. It's so exciting to welcome you here today for the very first edition of AI Pulse. And what a crowd we have here. I think over 1,000 people are here today and it's packed. And we also have thousands other tuning in via our live stream right now. Thank you for being with us. So my name is Aude. Durand. I'm Deputy CEO of Iliad Holding, and I've been leading AI initiatives for the group in the last year. And like many of you, I've had a hectic year because of generative AI taking off so strong. I know that a lot of you are already using AI on almost a daily basis, and most of you have AI-based projects and ideas that you want to bring to life, which is why with Scaleway, we've designed this event today for you, the users, and most importantly, the doers and makers of AI. To do this, we've had strong support from our sponsors, which I want to take a moment to thank: NVIDIA, Ampere, DDN, Alliance Accelerator, and HPE. Thank you so much for being with us today. We have an incredible lineup of speakers ready for you. And when I look around here, I see an amazing concentration of talents in engineering and AI research. But I also see investors and institutional partners ready to support you in this. It's a full ecosystem really brimming with life. So thanks to you all, I really think that the future of AI starts now. In a few words, what do we have in store for today? This morning, we'll have exclusive sessions with leaders of AI, and you'll also hear from world-class AI scientists. This afternoon, we'll have more hands-on sessions with tech experts at the forefront of their field, sharing their technical know-how with you. But to kick off this morning, I would like to introduce you the host of this event. Has been transforming Scaleway into a leading player in AI cloud services. Please join me in welcoming on stage the CEO of Scaleway, Damien Lucas.
Wow, what a privilege to be here, the temple of French tech. And Aude, yes, at Scaleway, we are building the leading European cloud provider. And it started with AI. As of today, Scaleway is your best option for AI cloud services. And when I say your best option, I mean all of you, from the large enterprises to the early phase startups. Some of you may have seen, last week, we announced a startup program with Meta, together with our friends at Hugging Face, Station F, and HEC, the well-known French business school. But that's not it. We are going even further. Today, we announced another partnership with NVIDIA Inception Program. Within those partnerships, Scaleway offers free cloud credits to help you kick off your business. But because they are absolutely key to any AI startup, we also offer priority allocation on our H100 GPUs. Thank you. But do you all know what are H100 GPUs? Maybe. What we know, and that is, it's a very powerful drug. We're really high on it. When we launched the H100 instances at Scaleway, we have seen huge demand. You all want your fix. We've seen usage up to 50 of them at a time. But we believe we can do even better. A lot of you are already anticipating the release of NVIDIA L4 GPUs. And thanks to our partnership with NVIDIA, our commitment today is to make them available in the early days of 2024. And for those of you who don't know what are NVIDIA L4 GPUs. They are universal accelerators that deliver efficient and cost-effective generative AI inference, as well as capabilities for every AI workload. So most of you use GPUs for inference, and that's OK. But I know that a lot of you are techies, and you're wondering, maybe there are some alternatives to GPU. At Scaleway, we have a great team to explore those technologies that you guys are expecting. And by the way, we're going to have an amazing panel this afternoon about the best technologies for inference. You're all welcome to check it out. The first technology I'd like to mention is ARM. We all know it, and we would all agree that ARM is a very promising and eco-efficient technology, potentially for inference. Thanks to our partner Ampere, we have launched ARM instances in Scaleway Cloud. This is available today. Thank you. Another CPU architecture that is very popular at Scaleway is the Apple Silicon. Since we launched the M1s, they have run constantly out of stock. So I'm very excited to announce the launch of the Apple M2 Pro instances. Those Apple M2 Pros are available today, thanks to the great work of the teams. They did really great to match the deadline, and they are available today. And in the computing world, there is another revolution in sight. A new technology that I believe we have not anticipated enough. Quantum computing is around the corner. And yes, I know the current quantum computers, as of today, are not powerful enough. But they will. Trust me, they will. And the bad news is the software industry is not ready for that. That's why, with our French partner Candela, we're launching today Quantum as a Service. How do we achieve that? We are achieving this because we are leveraging our compute capacity that we have thanks to the GPU to simulate quantum computing so that you guys can get ready. You guys can start preparing for the revolution right now. A month ago, we announced the largest computing capacity for AI in Europe. It's a supercomputer named Nabu 2023. And I'm sure you are all wondering what it's been used for. The answer is very simple. It's been used, we've had a lot of customers. We've had customers to use it for any possible AI workload. The first one is Poolside. Maybe you've heard of them. They recently relocated their operations to Paris to benefit from the exceptional AI European talents. They were the first to experience the power of our cluster. And they actually leveraged it for pre-training. FreePro is our sister company in the Iliad Group. They have an amazing team of data scientists. And that team used the cluster to fine-tune existing open source LLMs, such as Llama 2, BERT, and Claude 2, on this supercomputer. Our friends from Hugging Face, our French friends from Hugging Face, they actually ran their proprietary software for benchmarking to evaluate the power of NABU 2023. And last but not least, Mistral. You all know them. They recently released their model, Mistral 7B. You all know that. But what you don't know is that they have launched training runs on 2023. And we can't wait to see what will come out of it. This afternoon, those teams will be on stage, and you will have the opportunity to learn about these great technologies directly from them. It's going to be a very powerful day. Let's feel the pulse.
Thank you, Damien. Well, I think everybody's pulse is about to accelerate because our next guest, with his signature leather jacket, is a rock star of AI. He's pioneered accelerated computing, and he's been central in evolving PC gaming, computer graphics, and now modern AI. Basically, GPUs wouldn't exist without him. Please join me in welcoming Jensen Huang, the founder and CEO of NVIDIA.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Hello, Jensen. It's so nice to have you with us.
Nice to see you, Aude. I wish I could be there in person. As you know, this week is APEC here in San Francisco. And because of some last-minute changes in schedule, I couldn't make it in time. And so I had to miss seeing all of you in Paris. I was looking forward to seeing Xavier and Damien and all my friends at Scaleway and seeing this amazing company, Mistral, and of course, catching up with my friend Eric Schmidt. And so I had a lot of expectations for the trip, and of course, seeing beautiful Paris and helping and celebrating with all of you AI, because as you know, je t'aime AI, and I know all of you love AI as well.
Well, thank you already for connecting at such a late hour Pacific time. That's already very generous of you. As you know, we're here in Station F, the world's largest startup campus. It's home to many technological startups, and especially AI startups. And I was curious about your perspective on the development and investments in AI here in Europe in comparison to other regions, and maybe how this relates to the availability of computing power all over the world.
Well, AI is developing very quickly in Europe, France particularly. Of course, as you know, France is the home of Yann LeCun and the FAIR AI Lab. Europe is the home of DeepMind, and my friend Demis there doing amazing work at DeepMind. And so Europe has always been rich with AI expertise. We have nearly 4,000, I think it is, AI startups that we work with in Europe, and 400 of them are in France. And so this is an area that is really developing very quickly. If you look at the advancement of AI, you could see it in several different pillars. You could feel the action of development, starting with, of course, venture capitalists and startups. Mistral is an example of a really exciting company, Map Silico, Qubit Pharmaceutical, Poolside that Damien mentioned earlier. I mean, these are really, really exciting startups. At the same time, you have to really get the infrastructure, the computing infrastructure going, and this is the reason why Scaleway is so important to the advancement of AI in France as well as AI in all over Europe. Without the infrastructure, without the instrument of AI, it's really hard for the researchers to advance their work. And then, of course, the third thing that's really important is the access to data. This is an area that many companies are starting to, particularly in different regions, are starting to realize that each one of the regions have their own data that they would like to train on, the culture of their region, the specific data of their domain and their particular industry. And so I think that you're seeing the researchers, the infrastructure, the availability of data, the social interest in advancing AI developing really quickly in France and in Europe.
Well, thank you. Well, you've said that having infrastructure here is pivotal and that cloud providers play a role. How does NVIDIA work with partners in Europe, with partners such as Scaleway, to empower all companies to develop AI projects? And what are the skills and the resources that are specific to cloud providers that are bringing to the table?
Well, these AI infrastructure, these computers are not your normal computers, as you know. The Scaleway system that we brought online, Nabu 2023, is not your normal computer. It's not a server. We call it a server, we call it a GPU server, but in every single way, it's a supercomputer. And you know what? Could I do this? Would you mind if I shared a slide with you? Just to frame some recent developments of what's going on at NVIDIA. And I think by framing that, you might get a feeling for the development around the world. The first thing and I'm going to read this from the upper left, and I'm going to go down and I'll work towards the right. The first thing that you'll see is that recently we stood online some very important supercomputers. This is the NVIDIA EOS, which is the supercomputer that we built for ourselves for our own development of the software stack, as well as developing and advancing AI. Research for self-driving cars, computer vision, robotics, digital biology, and so on. We built a digital twin of it, not a digital twin, a physical twin of it at Microsoft called the Azure Ego. These two systems are now the #1 highest performance AI system in the world. Nabu 2023 is a clone of this. It's an exact same version of this. So we could expect that Nabu 2023 is going to be one of the most advanced supercomputers in the world. These systems, the EOS and Azure, received the #1 performance in the world. It's also the 3rd fastest supercomputer in the world's top 500. It's got 10,000 hoppers in it. We announced recently that in Germany, Jülich, the Jülich scientific supercomputer, will be the largest supercomputer in Europe. That has been announced so far. Has 24,000 Grace Hopper 200s in it. So it's going to be a very large system. We're in the process of, we're not standing still. We're in the process of ramping up H200, the next version of Hopper. And the reason why we're doing this is because inference requires even more performance than ever before. And with Hopper, we're able to double the performance of inference without changing anything, without changing the system, without changing the software stack. The inference performance of large language models will double. What that says is that essentially reduces the cost of inference in half. We're also ramping up Grace Hopper 200. This gives us the ability to do something really fantastic, which is expanding the NVLink domain, which today is limited to 8 GPUs, into 32 GPUs. That's essentially saying we're going to build essentially a virtual giant GPU. Now, some of the things that's really important, and it has to do with a lot of developments in France related to open source, is the advancement of models that everybody could customize. And one of the areas what we've done is that we've optimized the models, optimized the computing stack, and containerized it and made it an API available on NVIDIA's cloud. This is basically model as a service. Those models could be accessible to all of the startups as a service, or you could download it, incorporate it into your own services. We announced NVIDIA's DGX Cloud. One of these days, I would love to have NVIDIA's DGX Cloud in Scaleway as well. And this is an area where we partner with the AI startups around the world so that we could use a sandbox to develop AI together. Our engineers, and you were asking earlier, how do we work with the startups in Europe? And the way that we do it is we have our engineers and our AI researchers and our computer scientists work together with startups to combine our expertise, and we have a place that we do it with do it in. We call it the DGX Cloud, which is essentially a sandbox, or another way to think about that is an AI factory. The two things that we announced recently, which is really exciting, and this is a real opportunity to accelerate the development of AI even further in Europe, is something that we call an AI foundry. Just as NVIDIA goes to TSMC to manufacture our chips, and we bring our domain expertise, our design expertise, and our understanding of the market, TSMC brings transistor technology, processing expertise, and their factories. NVIDIA brings our AI model expertise, our AI development expertise, and our manufacturing expertise, AI factories, and we could develop custom AI models for companies all over the world. This accelerates their ability to build their AI services and AI applications. We announced very recently 4 AI Foundry customers already: Amdocs, Getty Images, SAP, a giant company in Europe. I think some $50 trillion worth of the world's economy runs on top of SAP. They need to build custom AI models, and they want to build custom AI services. And ServiceNow also would like to do the same thing. By working with us, they could build their own proprietary AI models. They train it with their own data, with their own domain expertise, and they get to keep it. And so this partnership, this way of working with companies, whether it's startups or large established companies, can get them really accelerated into the marketplace. And so these different areas are the ways that we work with AI startups around the world. And of course, Scaleway works with us in the very foundational part of it, starting with the infrastructure, most advanced supercomputers, all of the software stack that NVIDIA is well known for. We call it NVIDIA AI Enterprise. That gives us the acceleration layers, the domain-specific languages and libraries, from data processing to training to validation, all the way to deployment of inferencing. And so this is maybe a way to frame all of the different ways you could work with us.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this. It proves again, if that was even necessary, that NVIDIA is a leading player in AI. Because you are, everybody is always asking you for comments on maybe what's next in AI. Do you want to share with us some of your vision?
Well, the first wave starts with startups and the internet companies. If you look at where the last years of activity, or the last 5 years of activity, the breakthrough of transformers, and that led to BERT and the generative models, whether it started with GAN to variational autoencoders to diffusion models. All of these different generative models enabled us to learn the representation of data of all different types, from proteins or chemicals or languages or images, and of course 3D graphics now, and video, some amazing breakthroughs in video. The ability for us to learn the representation of different data, generate data of different representations, really opened up the ability for every single industry to be able to benefit from AI. And that energy started, of course, from AI startups all around the world. It started from internet service companies and internet companies here in the United States. But you're now seeing the major second wave. And that second wave consists of two things. It consists of the recognition that every region and every country needs to build their sovereign AI. It's logical that there's French culture and the French language, or all the different countries in Europe, they have their own language, they have their own culture that really wants to get captured in their foundation model. Their industries are very different. So for example, in Europe, rich digital biology, rich healthcare industry. And of course, Europe is also the home of some of the largest industrial manufacturing companies. These are companies that are really strong in mechatronics, the intersection between mechanical manufacturing and electronics. It could be the automotive industry, the robotics industry. And so the different companies and different industries that benefit from AI are different than the consumer internet companies maybe necessarily here in the United States. So you're starting to see the second wave of AI, which is related to the expansion of generative AI around the world, and also the adoption of AI in different industries. Not just internet service companies, but the largest of industries, the traditional industries. And so we're seeing that second wave. And the thing that I'm really excited about is the application of generative AI in digital biology, which we're seeing a lot of advancements in, and also the beginnings of generative AI use in industrial manufacturing. And so the world's heavy industries, some of the most impactful opportunities for generative AI, both in saving energy, advancing much better algorithms for optimization, the ability for us to use a foundation model for robots, so that one model could be used that you could easily prompt or easily program these amazing robots to do all the kinds of different skills just from a foundation model that's fine-tuned. And so the type of breakthroughs that we're seeing in language, I fully expect to see in digital biology and manufacturing and robotics.
Lots of exciting things coming up then. There's another topic that I would want to broach upon, which is open source. As you know, some AI experts, in particular in Europe, are very attached to open sourcing their models. And I was wondering what you think the role of open source technology in general, in particular for AI, can be.
Well, I'm a huge fan of open source for several reasons. Let's acknowledge that without open source, how would AI have made the tremendous progress in the last decade? That's the first observation, historical. Presently, you have to ask yourself, if not for Llama 2, if not for the exciting Mistral 7B, how would the energy around generative AI be as great as it is across all of the industries, beyond just a couple of 2, 3 companies? And so the ability for open source to energize the vibrancy and pull in the research and pull in the engagement of every startup, every researcher, every industry is really quite vital. And you're seeing it play out just presently. Now, going forward, and I have to acknowledge also Clem's work at Hugging Face, our good friends there, really love their work. And I think it keeps the vibrancy of the ecosystem, the ability for us to do research, not just for the innovation of the models, but the safety of the models, the guardrailing, the fine-tuning, all of the different ways that we could keep AI safe and responsible. That technology needs to be innovated in open space. It allows researchers of all different types, hundreds of thousands of researchers around the world, not just hundreds of researchers, but hundreds of thousands of researchers to be able to engage this very important innovation. And so I think open source, both the technology of it, the culture of it, and I think the social engagement of it is really essential and quite vital.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, I think our session is already coming to a close, but thank you very much for being with us today, Jensen. I think I speak for everyone saying that you're welcome in Paris anytime, so please feel free to visit.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
All right. Well, since this morning, we've been talking a lot about all the computing power that is now accessible in Europe, thanks to NVIDIA and Scaleway in particular. Many teams have already been taking advantage of this, as you know. There's one team in particular that we wanted to introduce today. Last September, the Iliad Group announced a new project to fund an independent, non-profit research lab. We promised that you would learn more about this project today at AI Pulse, so I think it's time to deliver on this promise. And who better to tell us more than Iliad's founder, Xavier Niel. Hi, Xavier.
Good morning.
It's so great to have you here. How does it feel to be at the heart of the AI ecosystem?
So nice. The last time I was there was for the opening of Station F in 2017, 6 years ago.
6 years ago. Has it changed?
No.
All right, so I think you have some great news to announce today. Maybe you can start by telling us the driving force behind the project.
Yeah, we started to talk about this project together a few months ago, and with the idea of creating something different, non-profit, in France, in Europe, to help the ecosystem, because we were thinking that we will use all AI in our life in the following years, and we want to have models which could be created in Europe, and it was the beginning of the idea, and having these models being open.
And what are the things that would be necessary to attract talent to such a project?
What we know, we have the best talent in Europe and in France. When you look at any startups, any companies in the world about AI, you have always French people coming from our great math schools. And so the idea, how can we create something non-profit to attract this talent? And what do they need? We think they need compute power. They need to have the possibility to use a big AI computer, some of the ones that we talked a few minutes ago with our friend. And so it was the first idea. And the second idea is to give them the possibility to publish what they are doing in a way more or less open source. We like to use the word open science, and to have the possibility to them to publish what they are doing. We think it's very important, and it was the idea at the beginning of Linux. If it's not open, we think we cannot have the same scale, and so the idea is to create something big in AI, and so we decided to create this non-profit thing and to fund it at the beginning.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're talking about a real non-profit model.
Yeah.
I understand that there's an endowment to support this AI research.
Yes.
But as we know, AI research is pretty expensive. I mean, it requires a lot of resources. How do we find those resources in a non-profit model?
So we said at the beginning that we will finance this thing with 100 million, but thanks to some friends, we changed completely the scale of the project. So now we are close to 300 million of financing for this non-profit initiatives, which I'm not sure. I don't think we had any non-profit initiative in Europe anytime which is financed at this level. And thanks to two amazing friends who are here today, and maybe. We can ask the first one to come on stage.
Probably. Well, then join me in welcoming on stage our second founding patron of this project,
the
CEO.
Completely the scale of this project. So thank you, Rodolphe. And if you
Please
can
join us,
stage.
the CEO of CMA CGM, a leader in the world of shipping and logistics, Rodolphe Saadé. Hello, Rodolphe. Thank you for being here with us. I think it's fair to say that most people would not have expected CMA CGM to be among the founding patrons of such a research project. Perhaps you can tell us a bit more about why you've taken such a big interest in AI?
Sure. First of all, Xavier, thank you very much for this initiative. I'm very happy to be with you here this morning. First of all, you are not supposed to see me attending such a big event. Usually, we are shipping and logistics. It's a very conservative business. You can see I wear a tie, you don't. But besides this, I believe that AI will play a very important role in the shipping world. We at CMA CGM are using AI to optimize our routes, to look at ways to reduce fuel consumption. And this is having a big impact on the way we run our day-to-day business.
Okay, so I understand there are already multiple initiatives within CMA CGM to create value around AI, but supporting this fundamental research project is a whole other endeavor. Perhaps you can explain why it's important to do both?
I think we should not oppose business and non-profit initiatives. I believe that what has been initiated by Xavier makes quite a lot of sense. That is why we have decided to invest a lot of money into it. I believe that having in Paris such initiative with a lot of researchers looking at how to come up with new ideas related to artificial intelligence make a lot of sense, not only for us as a business, but also for the new generations. help them look at hopefully a better world, and if not, maybe to look at a world with more AI. The fact that it is in France, that it is an initiative that is being done by French and non-French investors makes quite a lot of sense.
Well, thank you for your insights. And as you said, it's not because we have 2 French patrons already here with us that the ambition of this project isn't global. Feel free to take a seat if you want. Before we welcome our 3rd guest, he's a prominent figure in the tech world and a very active philanthropist. And we are beyond proud to have him as one of the founding patrons of this nonprofit AI lab. Everyone, please let's give a warm welcome to Eric Schmidt. Hello, Eric. Thanks for being with us today. So I believe you have personal experience in AI research labs and participating to research. Can you maybe tell us about what you've been doing the past few months on this topic?
Well, first, let me thank my co-founders, funders, and especially you, who just never give up. And thank you for making all this happen. I've wanted to do this in France for a decade. It started with Sarkozy, if you remember him. And, because it's obvious that France should be a leader in this space. And so when Scaleway and the founders who we'll hear from together got this idea together, I sort of ran to help. I worked at Xerox PARC when I was very young and much smarter than I am now. And I also worked at Bell Labs, and I understand how research labs work. And the important thing about this team is they got the spec right. It's a flat organization, everybody shows up at work, right? They work together in collectives, and they solve really hard problems. And the things they're working on are at the state of the art.
Okay. And so how would you talk to young researchers and engineers and tell them why it's a great idea to join such a project? I believe you also have personal experience doing the same thing earlier.
One of the most exciting things in life is to invent something that no one else has done. It's a rare opportunity because it's so competitive, but when you do it, you have this enormous sense of accomplishment, that people are responding to you. So AI researchers face many, many problems, which are very interesting. As Jensen talked about, we have this huge computing framework, but we have lots of problems in the models. You have frontier models and open source models. They have very significant hallucination problems, agency problems, and so forth. If you look at the agenda, and again, you'll hear it later in a few minutes, you're going to hear a lot of emphasis on tool use, which is how the systems actually make things happen, and also various forms of learning. And remember, it's AI, and so AI should be learning. We don't fully understand how to make profound learning happen. We understand how to do pre-training and fine-tuning, but the more sophisticated approaches require research. In order to do that, first you need the smartest people in the world, which they're going to try to get, and second is you need an awful lot of hardware, which somehow Xavier managed to arrange in some way I don't fully understand. So you need both. That's why this is where people should be.
Okay. I think an important component of this project is also going to be about open sourcing, or more specifically, open science. How do you see open source contributing to AI in the next few years?
There's always a debate in my industry between open and closed source. And there are always ways of making money closed source, and there are always ways of making money open source. Most people go to business school and they learn the first, but they don't learn the second. So open source can be understood as a way where the society moves fast. Mm-hmm. If you want to go far, run together, right? And the fact that everything is shared means everybody can move it faster and faster. Most of the software platforms you all use today are based on open source. So it's very real. But it requires that you understand that you get the open source platform out and then you build on top of it. My guess is that the majority of the companies represented here, you will actually build closed applications on top of open source platforms. That would be my guess. That's how things happen fastest. It looks to me in the next 5 years that the frontier models, the so-called closed source ones, will be so expensive and so large that they will probably have specialized capabilities stronger than open source. However, open source should have much greater adoption. In those two models, that's the fight I want to watch. In my history, just to be clear, open source has always ultimately won.
I think we're all wondering why you're joining a project like this that is based in Europe. Do you think that we have what it takes to compete with all the impressive funding that already exists in the US or in China?
The French do, as long as you keep Brussels under control. So the basic problem here is we've got these I think you all know this, but let's be clear. The math and physics and technical training in France is world class. The problem is you're stuck in Europe with Brussels. And so you've got this weird regulatory structure which makes no sense, starting with the AI EU Act. So the way France will win is if Brussels is kept under some level of control to allow, sorry, I'm an American, I can just be obnoxious. Keep them under some level of control so that the French can follow the same business path that the Americans are. This is not a technical problem, this is a regulatory problem. France is big enough, you've got enough big markets, you've got enough users, you've got enough hardware, right? And the many other great things about France.
Speaking about regulatory issues, I know that you've recently made a proposal about AI safety, which has been raising concerns everywhere. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
So a number of us have worked in the industry, have been working on AI safety. And the simple example is you really don't want these systems doing things on their own. You want them under our control. Makes sense. The current models appear to have polymathic capabilities in certain areas that are of concern. One would be biology, another one would be cyber, there's a few others, misinformation. So a group of us wrote a set of documents about how to regulate this, which has largely become part of the EU Act, which was announced last week, and the US Executive Order, which was announced also last week. What it basically says is that below a certain threshold, it doesn't matter, do what you want. Above a certain threshold, which is 10 to the 26 flops at the moment, you need to register what you're doing. The government needs to know what you're up to, which I think is reasonable. I think the government should sort of watch these big things. I'm in favor of that. My own view is that that's going to be good enough for the next few years until these systems begin to be able to set their own objective functions. The industry believes this is possible. Some of the research that will be done in this institute may assist in that. And it's important that we get there. But when we get there, it's important to know that it's a big deal. When computers can begin to set their own objectives, then you have all sorts of possibilities where they get the wrong objectives. And we need to have a conversation globally about how to address that through restrictions, treaties, notifications, and so forth. It's a few years away.
Okay. And so in the meantime, do you think we should try and gather independent experts to build some sort of committee to audit this?
Well, what I'm hoping will happen is that France, and I say France, not Brussels, France will organize around something similar to what the UK did with a French flair, and figure out where those, from a government perspective, where these regulation points are. I can tell you that President Macron has a whole team looking at this. The digital minister is, I believe, here today and is fantastic. So the French government is taking this very seriously and in a really responsible way. So I think what we're going to see, if I can just predict it, is you're going to see leadership in the UK, France, and the United States.
Okay. And maybe building back to open source, do you think having open source models will help with the transparency and so help with AI safety in the long run?
Open source models are good and bad. They're good because you can see what they're doing, and they're bad because you can modify them. So there's a proliferation problem with open source Where imagine you build an incredibly powerful open source thing which includes the ability to hurt people. Now you wouldn't choose to do that, but let's say it just emerged in the training. We don't fully know how to restrict that in open source. And this is an area of active research.
Okay. You've spoken already about why young people would join this kind of project. I want to speak a little bit about why other major CEOs or philanthropists could participate in funding this project. What would you tell them to maybe understand why it's important?
When you look around, every single thing in this room, and all the software and all the hardware, had as its origin people, either governments or people, funding research. You, as smart as you are, and you're very smart, did not invent this all, right? Your predecessors funded decades of research that figured out how to make the light bulb work, how to make the air conditioning work or heat, energy systems, climate. There's just a long list. We take for granted that the last 100 years, the industrial age, now the information explosion, we take them for granted. But they were hard won, and they were hard won by people who toiled very long time in very dark labs with poor light, right, without a lot of credit. And they did it because they believed in a higher mission. Humans are better off, all of us, with a higher goal, a higher principle. That's why the great nations have a theory of what they do. Well, for what we do, our higher goal is to move technology forward. And you do that with powerful research. Everybody here needs to play in that. If you have money, give some of your money to research. Not that complicated, right? These two guys are doing it. Why can't you guys do it? Right?
Thank you so much for this call. I think we're almost coming to the end of this session. Is there any last message that you would like to share with us?
Well, the highest level message is that this is a very big day for me, because I really do believe that the French people, the French scientists, the French university system, the French very generous people, including some non-French, all of us collectively can really drive this. I think that it's worth noting that there's another, we haven't mentioned this, it's worth noting that there's another revolution in quantum, where again, AI and GPU simulation is a huge new business. Mm-hmm. So this is such a large platform, right? I mean, everyone's talking today about LLMs. It may be very well that 5 or 10 years from now, a new technology will emerge from this effort that will actually be better and different. It's how it works. Each is a stepping stone. We're on the stepping stones. If you're on the stepping stones, you eventually produce enormous societal wealth. Business wealth, government wealth, higher taxes, whatever it is you care about, that's how you do it. Right. And we're on that path today.
What a motivating conclusion. Thank you very much for your insights. Thank you, all three of you, for your generous contributions. Thank you. I think everyone is impatient to meet the team now. All right. I think everybody's very eager to meet the core scientific team of this project now that we've talked about it so much. So without further ado, let's welcome them on stage. Great to have you all here, finally, to launch this project after a few months working on it. Before I ask you all to tell us about your backgrounds, maybe Patrick, you can start with a few words of introduction about the lab.
Okay, well, first of all, thanks, Aude, and thanks to Scaleway for having us today on this spectacular stage. And here we are, indeed, in order to announce the launch of this non-profit Open Science AI Lab. And actually, I'm very excited and pleased now to reveal its name.
All right, welcome QTI then. It's an original name. How did you come up with it?
Okay. In a nutshell, during a couple of months, the code name for the project was Sphere, as the perfect, smooth geometric figure. And at some point, one of these clever guys figured out that the Japanese word for sphere is kyutai, which not only does sound nice and now look nice, but also conveniently finishes with AI, so we found that promising. And now to us, QTI really embodies not only the perfection of the sphere, but also the ecosystem that we want to embrace.
All right, well, so let's dive into what you're actually going to do at QTI.
Okay, so the main and big mission that we have set to ourselves is to build and democratize general artificial intelligence through open science. Here, general artificial intelligence means frontier models, foundation models. So what does it mean to do that? It means first to launch extremely ambitious, impact-driven research projects on these models, and it's been discussed already just before. Second, to share our findings, the models, the codes with, first of all, the scientific community, but also the rest of the AI ecosystem, the developers, the startups, the companies, the universities, and even the decision makers. And third, to contribute to the training of the next generation of AI experts through mentoring of PhDs and interns.
All right, that's an ambitious mission. What do you actually need to achieve this?
Okay, I think we need a few key ingredients here. First, a very strong team. Second, compute at scale. And third, the financial resources to get this. And regarding the latter, we just heard that we are incredibly lucky and immensely grateful, really, to have the support of our three funding donors. So that's really amazing, and in particular, it allows us to secure the necessary compute, starting with the access to the NABU 2023, which was revealed earlier this morning at Scaleway.
Well, indeed, I think you have amazing support from your founding patrons already, and I'm convinced that after Eric Schmidt's speech earlier, you'll probably have many more coming along. I understand that you also have support from several key strategic advisors.
Yeah, so before we talk about the team, I think it's good to say a few words about the advisors. We are privileged to have three key figures of the field around us. So let me start with Yejin Choi. She is a professor at the University of Washington and a researcher at the Allen Institute for AI. And she is a very renowned and extremely active specialist of large language models. Next, we have Yann Lequin. I don't think I have to say much more about him in front of this audience. Turing Award laureate and one of the godfather of the modern AI. And last but not least, there is Bernard Cholkov. He is one of the most respected machine learning scientists in the world. He is a founding director at the Max Planck Institute for Intelligent Systems in Tübingen.
Right. Well, you're surrounded by world-class scientists, but you yourselves have already contributed a lot to the AI field. Patrick, in particular, I know that you've worked in a variety of places, academia and private labs. Can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Sure. Indeed, I had the opportunity to do research in both worlds. I spent 12 years at INRIA, which is the public French Institute for Computer Science, and almost 20 years in three different private labs, doing open research, as it were, on very different fields of applications, starting with Microsoft Research, working in particular on generation and editing of content, then at Technicolor in the movie industry, working on motion capture, visual effects, and movie post-production. And I spent pretty much the last 6 years building and leading an amazing team, Valeo.ai at Valeo, working on research of AI research for automotive applications, in particular for autonomous driving and advanced driving assistance systems. And I will just pick two recent projects among many out of this team. The first one is the design of a novel transformer-based architecture to give an autonomous car the ability to perceive at 360 degrees with cameras. And the other one is about what is called self-supervised learning of representations for driving cars, using both cameras and LiDARs, the laser scanners. And as it turns out, this idea of using two different input modalities is something very important for us at QTI.
All right. Well, thank you, Patrick. I maybe want to move on to Hervé now. Hervé, I know that you headed up a team of researchers at Perez, Facebook AI Research. Can you tell us more about this? Because I understand that one of your key missions is going to be training junior researchers and PhD students.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, 4 of my previous PhD students at FAIR are now AI research experts working in Paris. 2 of them have actually joined Mistral AI, which was mentioned this morning, and also I think will be represented this afternoon. And 2 others of my former students actually are now AI experts in companies, prestigious labs in France, in Paris. So this is why in QTI we regard training future AI experts as part of our mission. We will mentor PhD students while doing research, and later on they will contribute to the ecosystem on their own.
Okay, well, you're clearly a great professor. Coming back to your work, I know that you contributed to the FACE library, the Facebook AI similarity search. I'm not an expert, but I understand it's the most popular library for indexing large amounts of content produced by AI systems. Can you explain to us a little bit more what this is?
Right. So the story about FACE is that it started as an AI research project, but somehow some companies have adopted it for their own purpose, and actually some startups built some business out of it. And I think this is one example that shows that open sourcing is compatible with industry interest, startup creation, and exploratory research. But I think that Laurent will talk about open sourcing
All right,
later
well,
on.
let's move on to Laurent then. Open source will be a key element of QTI's mission, and you've already contributed to several large open source projects. So what do you actually mean by open source in this QTI lab?
Yeah, as Patrick mentioned earlier, our mission at QTI will be to bring up the next generation of AI models and to make it available to everyone. In order to achieve this, we will rely on open science and open source. So this means that all the product of our research will be available under a permissive open source license. This will include the model code, the model weights, but also the code to train the model so that everyone can reproduce our results. So we want also the community to bring innovative products based on our research. We want startups to be able to build stuff, and it means that more than releasing the code, we will engage with the community and drive the adoption of our models, as well as get back some feedback from the community. Earlier today, Jensen Huang mentioned that open source has been key to the development of AI, and that's definitely the case. NVIDIA has brought up CUDA, Facebook has built PyTorch, Google has built JAX and TensorFlow, and these have been key to putting AI at the stage where it is at the moment. And that's something that we want to participate in.
Okay. Well, after everything we've said about open source, and our previous speaker said, if anyone is still skeptical about why and how it can actually move further AI when ChatGPT has already been released for a year and everybody is using their APIs, what can you explain about what the open source community has already contributed to in the last year?
Yeah, there has been some pretty interesting developments there. Like since ChatGPT was released back in last December, you had research labs that have released open source models that are quite competitive, and the open source community has built several projects that are actually about running this model on consumer devices rather than on GPU servers. So the idea there and the challenge there is that this device have access to only a limited amount of memory and a limited amount of compute, so it's not that easy to run very complex models on top of them. There has been a lot of progress being made there, and if it's successful, it means that pretty much anyone will be able to run a small version of ChatGPT in your cell phone or right in your pocket. That would give the power of large language model to pretty much anyone. So again, it's somewhere that we hope to contribute to.
Okay. Well, you've just mentioned large language models, the famous LLMs. And Edouard, I know this is your area of expertise. Perhaps you can tell us more about your background in language models?
Yeah, so I started working on language modeling 8 years ago when these systems were mostly used in machine translation system or automatic speech recognition. And so in that time, we moved from using recurrent neural network to transformer to train models on a single GPU to using thousands of them. And I think more importantly, LLM also started playing a central role in language understanding and more generally in AI by being able to represent knowledge about the world and to reason about it. So personally, one research direction that I've been working on was to add a retrieval component to large language model to make their prediction more factual. And so you can think about this as allowing LLM to use a search engine to access external information such as Wikipedia. I also co-started the Llama project, which is a meta open source large language model that lead to the big growth of the open source community around this technology that Laurent was just mentioning.
Well, so as you just said, there's a large community of people working on LLMs, and they're already pretty well known. What would be Qtai's ambition on this particular topic if so many already exist?
So at Qtai, we will do exploratory research with the goal to invent new algorithms to tackle the current limitation of LLM. Our mission, which is to democratize artificial intelligence, will also inform our research program, because open sourcing code and models is a critical step for democratization, but it doesn't stop here. We also want to invent new methods that make these models more accessible. So for example, we want to make this model more efficient so that we can run and train them on consumer hardware or devices. We also want to make this model more modular, easier to personalize, so that everybody can specialize them for their own use cases, and that also goes. For that, we'll also need to enable them to use tools typically that Eric was mentioning earlier.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, someday I'll be able to have my own personal AI assistant on my portable device.
Yes.
Okay. I imagine then for a personal AI assistant to be powerful, it needs to go beyond text interface. And that brings me to you, Niel. I understand that you will be focusing on expanding the range of senses of AI models to go beyond text.
Yes, absolutely. So this kind of personal AI assistant where you can write and get text as return, it will be already quite useful for a wide range of tasks, right? But now let's say that I want to improve my public speaking skills, whether it's my delivery, it's my tone, my English pronunciation, my body language. Now text start to be a bit limiting as an interface, right? And if we take a step back and take inspiration of humans, we reason about what we perceive through our many senses, what we see, what we hear, what we touch, and these many senses inform our decisions. The same way when we communicate, we do it in a multimodal way, in the sense that when I speak, I send information about what I say, but also how I say it, my emotional state, my intent, and so on and so forth. For all these reasons, one of our main research competition at Qtile will be to build algorithms, AIs that are empowered with these many senses, and in particular that can both understand but also generate not only text, but audio, images, and videos.
Oh, so you've just mentioned audio, and when you spoke earlier, you told me that you've been working in the field of audio since you were the first PhD student at Facebook AI Research. So can you tell us a bit about your journey in this field?
Yeah, so I was very lucky to be able to do my PhD in an environment where I was given a lot of compute resources and in a very rich environment, and that then led me to join Google DeepMind and build and start my own team there. And the reason why I tell that story is because this is why I deeply believe also in the mission of mentoring and training the next generation of AI researchers, as was mentioned by Hervé. And since the beginning of my doctoral studies, my main mission that has really driven me was to build machines that can understand everything that they hear, whether it's speech or natural sounds and so on, and can speak naturally in return. And it took form last year when I initiated a project with my team at Google DeepMind called AudioLM, where we showed that the very same architecture that can be used to take text and generate text, like ChatGPT and language models, can easily be adapted to instead process natural speech and produce natural speech in return. And this was a very exploratory work that we published in a scientific journal. And since then, it has been adopted across all the industry as a go-to way to do speech synthesis. So I think this also shows, regarding all the discussions there were about open source and business, how open science, open sourcing, open research can really accelerate the advancement of AI, including for industrial applications.
Okay. But so you've been talking about speech. What if I want to go beyond speech? Like, what if someone wants to sing to their personal AI assistant?
Yeah, so an interesting finding is that the same way we could easily adapt a model that was developed for text, originally adapted to instead process speech, we could make this kind of models process any kind of sound. And what we discovered is that the transformer architecture and the language models are a much more fundamental reasoning systems than just a text system, right? And in particular, one specifically exciting application that we also found is that these kind of models, they can speak naturally, but they can also generate very high quality music, for example.
Oh, great. So you're giving me my perfect transition to Alex speaking about music, because I believe you're passionate about AI-free music.
Yes, I think music is super interesting because in many ways it's actually more challenging to model than speech, because you need to generate many instruments synchronized together over a long period of time, and the expectations in terms of quality are super high. So I was leading the effort for music generation at Meta with one goal in mind: to find the simplest approach to do the job. And this summer we released MusicGen, generative AI for music that is fully open source. So the training code is open source, the inference code is open source, and the weights are available. And we immediately saw the community, other research team, and even hobbyists picking up on that framework, building on it and extending it. And I think this relates to what Laurent was mentioning, the magic and the beauty of open source. And this is why it's essential that open source and open science is at the heart of Qtile mission.
Right. Well, I said you're passionate about AI for music, but you've, of course, been working on other fields of AI. Maybe describe a little what you've been doing.
Yes, I realized that the same tools that we had been developing, the architectures, the techniques for audio processing, could also be used to better understand brain activity through non-invasive neuroimaging. And this is important because up until now, it was only possible through surgically implanted sensors, and this can have important medical applications. And I think this really shows how exploratory research can help push the boundaries of AI applications.
Right. Well, thank you all for sharing about your experiences and the mission of Qtile. Exciting time to be developing AI, right? Patrick, perhaps you want to wrap up in a word about what's on the horizon?
Yes, so I really think it's an extraordinary adventure starting with Qtile right now, right here. By the way, it might be a good omen, but it's Hervé's birthday today, so happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
so now the next steps, we have already a strong core team, and we are working at expanding it, so we are hiring talented people. We are designing and training the first models, so just stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us. Right. Well, since this morning we've heard about ambitious investments in AI in Europe and in particular in France, and I think we're very lucky to have such a welcoming environment here and to foster a strong ecosystem. And our next guest is a true believer that France and Europe are the best places to scale up in AI. And so I am honored to introduce the French Minister for Digital Transformation and Telecommunication, Mr. Jean-Noël Barrot.
Bonjour à toutes et tous, cher Xavier, cher Rodolphe, cher Eric. I'm very often asked, why does President Macron, why does Bruno Le Maire, why do you care so much about AI? What is it all about? You French people, you do wine, you do fashion, you do luxury. Why do you seem to care so much about AI? And so the response I give to them is that first we care about AI because we see AI as a key to overcome the greatest challenges of the century. Climate change, of course, where generative AI will help us lower our carbon footprint and adapt in a much better way to the consequences of climate change. Health, of course, since we've seen already transformer models and generative AI accelerate scientific research, and we have great hopes that some of the great diseases of the 20th century will be cured once and for all thanks to this technology. And also, we believe that AI will help us achieve something that we've failed to do properly in the previous wave of digitalization, which is to make public services much more accessible to our co-citizens. When we've digitalized public services, we've made them even harder to access for a number of our co-citizens, generating immense democratic frustration. With generative AI, with the ability to address information with language, our great hope is to make access to rights and public services much more simple. That's the first reason I give. The second one is that we want to develop our own models in France and in Europe, whatever it takes. We want to develop our own models because we want to be independent, because we want models that incorporate our vision of the world, our vision of privacy, our vision of copyright, and we know very well that the one that builds the model, that builds the tool, has much more power on the tool than the one that regulates it. So we want to own and build our own models. And we want models that are interoperable, that are open. We want a level playing field, and that's why we favor open source and open science. Because this is both a way to stimulate innovation. We believe that monopolies are bad for innovation and are bad for government. They're bad for innovation because they limit the way innovation can spread, and they are bad for government because monopolies gather too much power for them to be democratically sustainable. That's why we want to own our own models, and that's the second reason I give. And the third reason I give is that we may have lost some battles in the digital era, but we certainly have not lost the war. And when I look around the room, what I see is that we have the greatest army. I see a generation of entrepreneurs and researchers that have graduated and obtained their PhDs from our top universities, that have gone to the best and most prestigious research labs in AI around the world, and that have come back to France and Europe to set up their own companies and develop their own models. I see Mistral, I see Helsing, I see Photoroom, I see Dust. I see many of the entrepreneurs that are around in this room today and that are going to help France and Europe lead in the AI revolution. And when I see the six musketeers of QTI, I'm sure that while we lost some battles, we will win this war. And this is the reason why we're adopting a pro-innovation, a radically pro-innovation approach to regulation. And as we speak, we're negotiating the EU AI Act and convincing, Eric mentioned earlier that the goal was to keep Brussels under control. I think we can lead by conviction, by convincing our fellow member states and the EU Parliament that it is key if we want to have AI that incorporates, that embeds organically our vision of privacy, of copyright, of mankind and of the world. It's key that we have our own models. And that Europe needs to be an innovation superpower, not a normative superpower, if we want these models to be developed here. So we are fighting a tough battle, but we've made progress, and I'm very confident that this idea that over-regulating generative AI models in the EU AI Act is a bad idea, and that more and more people are convinced that this is the case. This is why we've been investing so much under the leadership of President Macron over the past 5 years to get ready for this generative AI revolution. With the national strategy on AI, where we've built muscle in talent, with a number of investments in AI clusters, with investments in compute, with the Jean-Z supercomputer that has helped train previous generations of models such as Bloom. And this is why President Macron has announced before the summer new investments dedicated to the development of generative AI models in France and Europe. Talent with AI clusters, 500 million. Data with the collection of training data sets based on the French language and cultural heritage. And also money for compute in order to strengthen our ability to provide researchers and entrepreneurs with top-notch compute possibilities. But we will not be able to succeed alone, meaning the French government, even though sometimes the French government believes that he can basically do what the economy needs on its own. And this is the reason why today is such an important day for France and perhaps for the world. For France, it's a day that is almost, if not as important, as June 29, 2017, when Station F opened its doors for the first time, becoming the flagship of the startup nation and setting France on the map of the top innovation nations around the world. The announcements of this morning are setting France on the map of the top AI nations in the world. The announcements pertain to compute, and they are very important because not only are the investments massive, but also they represent the very first allocations of NVIDIA in Europe. This is a super strong signal because NVIDIA does not lack customers or potential customers. This is a super strong signal that France is on par with the very top leading countries in AI. It's also a very important day because of the foundation, because of QTI, because of this investment in research and in open science that is going to play a major role in structuring our AI ecosystem in France, in Europe, and beyond. So I'd like to close with two messages. The first, I'd like to express my deep gratitude on behalf of the French government to Xavier Niel, Rodolphe Saadé, for funding this foundation. These are some of the most successful entrepreneurs that France has known. They could be resting on their success. They could be investing in pieces of art, but they're choosing to reinvest the fruits of their success into AI, into building muscle, into building talent and compute for France and for Europe. This is fantastic, and I'd like you to give them a huge round of applause for that. Second, I'd like to join Eric Schmidt by urging all of our other successful entrepreneurs in France in telling them that they can do something good for their country, for Europe, by investing alongside Xavier and Rodolphe in this new revolution that is ahead of us, that is already here actually, by helping us building talent, building compute to make sure we win this war. So, thank you very much for the commitment of the founding partners of the foundation, for the commitment of the team. Let's get to work pour que vive QTAI, vive la République et vive la France.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Barrot, for your strong support to the AI ecosystem. I've actually just heard from our director that we've received a last-minute but very special message of support from none other than the President of the French Republic, Emmanuel Macron. So please, bear with us as we haven't had time to test this video, and let's roll with it.
Monsieur le Président d'Iliad, cher Xavier, cher Rodolphe Saadé, cher Eric Schmidt, mesdames et messieurs, chers amis. Je ne peux malheureusement pas être avec vous car avec la Première ministre, je vais retrouver les chefs de parti, les présidents d'assemblées constitutionnelles à Saint-Denis pour poursuivre les échanges sur l'évolution de nos institutions et les grands dossiers du pays. Mais je voulais, par cette vidéo, être quelques instants avec vous. D'abord pour vous dire l'importance de cette journée à la Station F, une conférence européenne dédiée à l'intelligence artificielle. Nous mesurons tous et toutes combien l'intelligence artificielle a chaque jour de plus en plus d'impact sur nos vies. Et de vous savoir autant et réunis est pour nous tous un beau motif de confiance dans l'avenir. Et je veux ici remercier les équipes de Scaleway, de Station F, qui ont contribué à donner à cette journée justement son relief et à cette conférence cette qualité. Nous vivons une époque pleine de remises en question avec des guerres, des tensions croissantes, une époque aussi d'opportunités entre la transition climatique, les bouleversements technologiques. Et l'intelligence artificielle, en particulier l'IA générative, fait partie de ces évolutions majeures. Elle ouvre un potentiel immense et c'est dans cette optique que nous avons précisément mis en place la commission sur l'IA et que nous accueillerons la prochaine édition du sommet sur l'intelligence artificielle à Paris l'année prochaine. Alors, je vais ici vous rappeler notre stratégie. La première brique, c'est notre souveraineté technologique. Pour que notre voix porte, la France doit d'abord avoir les entreprises et les talents qui comptent. C'est une course technologique effrénée et ces derniers mois, on le voit bien, ces modèles à la frontière ont encore beaucoup progressé et je souhaite que nous nous maintenions dans le peloton de tête. La France s'est montrée pionnière il y a 5 ans avec une stratégie dotée d'1,5 milliard d'euros. En quelques années, nous sommes parvenus à créer plusieurs instituts de recherche disciplinaires, des chaires de recherche, à doubler le nombre de diplômés en IA, à augmenter de 500 le nombre de doctorants. Désormais, tout l'écosystème IA national foisonne de talents, d'entreprises. Tous nos champions se mobilisent. Notre école de mathématiques, nos ingénieurs, nos intégrateurs et de supercalculateurs, nos clouders, etc., etc. Et on doit, avec France 2030, encore et encore accélérer. Pour ça, le cœur de la bataille, c'est de former plus de talents, en mathématiques en particulier, mais un peu dans tous ces domaines, parce qu'on le voit bien, c'est intersectoriel. c'est d'aller plus vite sur les infrastructures de calcul, et donc nous allons accélérer sur la partie publique, mais on a besoin de la mobilisation du privé, et c'est d'avoir de l'énergie décarbonée, et à cet égard, la stratégie de Belfort que nous sommes en train d'accélérer est une force, et nous serons au rendez-vous, et c'est d'avoir de larges bases de données de qualité. Nous avons un modèle français plutôt centralisé, nous avons ces bases de données, c'est ce qu'on est en train de continuer d'accompagner. Je crois aussi fortement à l'open source, et nous devons en faire une force française. Nous poursuivons donc le financement massif d'une recherche indépendante, avec la mise en place des IA clusters, pour concentrer les talents, la recherche et le calcul. Nous allons également lancer de grands challenges pour attirer les meilleurs en France et nous finançons des programmes de recherche portés par l'INRIA, le CEA, le CNRS, ou bien par des initiatives privées que je salue sur les prochaines innovations de rupture, sur le post-IA générative, etc., etc. Enfin, il faut du calcul. Le supercalculateur Jean Z sera étendu et nous devons en tenir compte pour nos futurs supercalculateurs, notamment l'Exascale à venir. Alors une fois que nous avons les technologies, il faut les diffuser dans l'économie notamment, tant du côté de l'offre que de la demande. Nos investissements y contribueront. Au-delà d'un enjeu industriel, l'IA constitue en effet un défi civilisationnel. Et comme j'ai eu l'occasion de le rappeler, par exemple à l'inauguration de la Cité internationale de la langue française à Villers-Cotterêts, nous devons faire en sorte que les modèles qu'on appelle fondationnels de l'intelligence artificielle ne soient pas simplement nourris d'anglais. Je souhaite qu'ils reflètent aussi notre culture française, notre langue, notre manière de penser, que nos artistes puissent, s'ils le souhaitent, utiliser cette technologie à des fins créatives avec leur propre imaginaire culturel. C'est pourquoi nous allons mener une politique d'ouverture de nos bases de données, tout en protégeant les droits d'auteur et les droits voisins, pour lesquels la France a toujours été en tête. La cité de Villers-Cotterêts sera au cœur de cette démarche, et vous le savez, je n'oppose pas à cet égard l'innovation de pointe et la diffusion de la culture, et la capacité justement à porter notre modèle, c'est ce que nous voulons faire. Ensuite, il y a la régulation. Elle n'est pas l'ennemi de l'innovation, bien au contraire. Il ne s'agit pas de définir des bons modèles, mais de nous assurer que les services mis à disposition de nos citoyens soient sûrs pour eux, pour les autres acteurs économiques et pour notre démocratie. Des modèles sûrs, loyaux, transparents et qu'on peut donc discuter démocratiquement est la clé. C'est pourquoi nous devons permettre à nos concitoyens de conserver le contrôle sur leurs données personnelles. C'est pourquoi il faut garantir la propriété intellectuelle et la protéger. C'est pourquoi aussi il nous faut veiller à la fiabilité de l'information, ce qui est un enjeu pour nos démocraties. La Commission sur l'IA a été chargée de formuler des propositions sur ces enjeux. L'état de l'art des possibles est encore émergent et nous devons fortement soutenir la recherche. Cette question de la régulation, nous devrons y associer nos partenaires européens, mais aussi extra-européens. Avec les travaux autour du règlement européen pour l'intelligence artificielle, dont les trilogues sont en cours, la régulation doit être maîtrisée, non punitive, pour préserver l'innovation, pour réguler les usages, davantage que les technologies en tant que telles. Avec les échanges internationaux via le G7, avec qui nous avons fondé le partenariat mondial pour l'innovation, pour l'intelligence artificielle, qui rassemble aujourd'hui 28 pays et l'Union européenne au complet, ou encore récemment avec le sommet de Londres, dont nous organiserons dans un an le suivi en France, et le Forum de Paris sur la paix, qui m'a permis de faire le point à cet égard. Je souhaite qu'au premier semestre de l'année prochaine, la France fasse des propositions très concrètes, des propositions d'action de régulation très précises. Les prochaines semaines donc, vont être concertées à consulter avec vous, et que nous puissions le faire sur la base la plus large possible avec l'OCDE pour avoir tout de suite une plateforme qui ne soit pas simplement européenne ou limitée à quelques pays. Et pour moi, le premier semestre de 2024 doit servir de fondement. In this very context, where innovation and acceleration of innovation, diffusion of this innovation to culture and creativity, and regulation are absolutely critical, your involvement today in Paris is absolutely key. And I want to thank you because the commitment of the private sector alongside with the public sector is absolutely key. And the fact that you decided to invest at least 300 million euro on artificial intelligence here in order to educate, to keep, to train talents, to help to increase our capacities, to increase our infrastructures, and to be part of this game, and to help France to be absolutely one of the key leaders in Europe is a very important moment. So let me tell you that this initiative and your conference is for me not just a conference to speak and to exchange views, but the very beginning of a conference where people put money and people start deciding. And what I want us to do in the months to come is precisely to follow up and now to decide. Chers amis, la France a le goût pour les révolutions. Nous sommes mobilisés à vos côtés. Pour cela, nous avons besoin de vos idées, de vos projets, de votre engagement et je veux vous remercier pour cette conférence à Paris. Continuez vos travaux avec nos écoles, nos universités, nos grands organismes de recherche. Je compte sur vous, nous serons là et à très bientôt. Bons travaux, merci.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, for your message. Well, it's been an insightful morning here at AI Pulse. We have more to come this afternoon, and I think we'll really all be ready to build the future of AI together. It's going to be a long road ahead, but it's a privilege for us, for Scaleway, and for QTI to be a part of this. Thank you to all our audience here in Paris. Thanks to everybody watching us on the live stream. Be sure to tune back in this afternoon for our expert talks to dig more into the inner workings of AI. This morning's replay will be available soon if you've missed anything. And until then, I wish you all a very pleasant day. Thank you.